So this is going to be a really quick video showing you how I made these door bezels for a truck. I believe it's a Chevy Silverado. The customer had the regular plastic kind, which you saw me take off the door handle, and he wanted the same exact thing made but in walnut. So I'm going to show you how I did that. The first one I made, I didn't have the door handle blank, so it was a little bit harder. So I'm going to show you how I made the second one after I had the blank. So I had to use the plastic piece in the beginning, and it has these little tabs that fit onto the door handle. So you could see in my original I had those little tabs, but the customer and I decided that we didn't really need those, and it probably wouldn't work with the wooden tabs anyway, so you won't see that part in the video, but that was the original plan. So to start this off, I had a scrap piece of walnut that was actually just about the thickness I needed, which was awesome. I didn't plane it down or anything. I just drilled a couple holes in it and then cut out my rough shape with the jigsaw. So the first one I did, I used the plastic blank to get this pattern. On the second one, since I already had it in wood, it was easier to trace because the plastic is a little warped on the replacement bezel, so it was hard to get the pattern. So for this one, I just copied the one that I already knew fit on the door handle. So I cut out the inside first, cleaned it up with the jigsaw, and then I would go through and cut the outside out as well. And my camera starts to vibrate off the table, but essentially it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm just following that outer line, which is a rough line. It's not exact because I wanted to dial in the measurements with sanders. So once that was done, since this is rough lumber, I just cleaned it up on a belt sander, and then I used the little disc sander on this belt sander as well to bring it to my line. So the outer line I could easily get to with the sander, and I could hone it on that piece. To get the curve on these handles, I used a small little finger plane almost. It's very quick work to go through and feather over those corners so that you get a nice gradual curve. There's not a lot of detailing work to these pieces, so I used the hand tools to be able to really dictate what material I was removing and how quickly. Sometimes with sanders on small pieces like this, you could remove too much material very fast and then you have to restart. So you could see with that little plane I have, it was very simple work to go through and just round over that edge. I was not making a 45, but I was basically taking a little bit of material off and then feathering it to each side of the walnut, and it just gave me a nice gradual curve that matches the original. Once I had that, I could clean up the inside. So the inside, this is actually my third one. The second one I made, I took off too much material and it was too loose of a fit. So I really recommend taking off small amounts and going back and fitting it as you go. The problem is the actual chrome part of the handle extends beyond where the bezel goes, so you kind of have to slip it into place. So it will look like it's a little too big when a little too small when in actuality it's not. So to start off, I went through and took the one that I knew already fit and made some marks on it, and I'm going to be using it's not a Dremel, it's a more high-powered rotary tool with a nicer bit on the end of it to remove that material. So the outside was already pretty clean, but the inside you could see my pencil marks, and I'm slowly just going through and smoothing out those inside edges, cleaning up the jigsaw cut because sometimes that cut's not perfectly square, and then as I go I'm testing it to the handle so that I'm not removing too much material. So it was just a matter of taking a little bit off, testing it, taking a little bit off, testing a little bit more. And this bit is really nice because on end grain it works really well. It leaves a nice smooth surface, so I didn't have a ton of sanding to do. So once I got the fit pretty close, I went through and just rounded over that inside edge because on the plastic piece that inside edge is rounded over as well. And then I started cleaning it up even more with a smaller bit so that I could get into all of my corners. the bigger bit was a little too big for some of these corners, so I could go through and fine tune the fit. So you can see about there is where I'm getting pretty close to getting it just about perfect. A little bit of material had to be removed from the corners. I want this to be a tight fit because we're not using those tabs. We kind of decided on, since there's enough flat surface on the back of the wood, to use some double-sided automotive adhesive, and that will hold it in place, but you should be able to still pop it off if you have to. So then the back side I have to remove some material so that the locking lever still works, and there's a plastic bit of this that also sticks out as well. So I'm just making all those marks, and then I can mortise out all this material. I just mortise out enough to the point where then I could start using the locking mechanism. The customer and I have been going back and forth because I obviously do not own a Silverado truck, so I was asking him basically if there's any other things on the actual door that will impede the movement of the handle, and he said that it was just those couple little parts that would have to be chiseled out, because the back side of the plastic piece is completely hollow, so I didn't know if the wooden one would have to be as well. So it was really nice to be able to keep communication. So once I had those hollowed pieces, I just sanded it down to a nice clean finish. There'll be a little bit more finishing detail on this, but this is basically it. It slides into place, it sits flush with where it's supposed to, the housing on the door, and you can see that the lock, it holds in place by itself even by shaking it, and the locking mechanisms and the door handles both work on the two pieces. So you can pop it off easily, but like I said, it holds itself into place. With a little bit of that automotive adhesive tape, it should hold quite well. Then I'll put a little bit of oil on it just to bring out the grain, and then once the oil dries, I'll clear coat it. We haven't decided on the sheen of the clear coat yet, so this video will end with just the oil, but even with the clear coat on, this is basically what the two are going to look like. So those are the two finished pieces. So it's a nice custom piece of woodworking that I think just about anyone with a couple tools can do. Most of this could be done by hand if you don't have a bunch of power tools.